Welcome on into Forward Progress, presented by Fanduel Sportsbook. I'm your host, Eric Pauly, with our two guests today. We have Suma and Judah talking some Week 15 takeaways, some future markets, some Week 16 opening lines, as well as Monday Night Football for tonight. We have a double header. We missed you guys last week, so sorry that we were not here. And unfortunately, breaking the bad news early that we're not going to be here next week because of the holiday schedule, but wanted to just make that clear right now. We're missing you as well, Cleve TA, but we have an amazing show for you guys today. And if you're watching over on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to make sure you're not missing any of the content. We're also, if we're also live on X today as well, make sure that you hop over onto YouTube and hit that subscribe button so you can hop into the chat and ask some questions and make sure that you can get your questions answered by us while we're live. So if you're watching on X, we appreciate your viewership as well. Head over to YouTube, hit that like button, ask some questions, and let's get right into it, guys. So Week 15 was an absolutely awesome week of football. Full slate for the first time with a couple of buys. And like I said, we have two Monday night games we're going to get to later tonight, and we're going to talk about as well. But let's begin with the MVP discussion, right? As you look at the market right now, it's not much of a race, as you have Josh Allen as a minus 900 favorite on FanDuel Sportsbook and Lamar Jackson sitting at plus 750. Both teams got the victories this past weekend, though one's was undoubtedly more impressive with Josh Allen taking the Bills into Detroit and getting a massive win in an immaculate game played against the Detroit Lions, while Lamar had to just go into MetLife Stadium and kick around a dead horse. But I'm going to go to you, Judah, based on what you're seeing. At this point, 15 weeks into the season, is it locked up and done? Or if Lamar beats Pittsburgh on Sunday, maybe the Bills drop a game or two, though they have an easy one coming up this week against the Patriots. Is this still a race, or is this race over?
I think this race is over. I mean, you combine kind of all elements here, which is like a Bills team that is probably going to finish at the very top of the AFC. You've got Josh Allen putting up now counting stats in the last bunch of weeks. I mean, breaking records seemingly every week. Last week was 6 touchdowns, 3 passing, 3 rushing. This week throwing for 350 plus yards. And then you also have a lot of these highlight reel plays, especially kind of down the stretch, right? He had the touchdown pass to himself. He's doing something crazy every week, and I think that kind of just like appeals to the voters, and he's probably deserving of it also. I mean, this is a guy who leads the NFL in EPA per play, which obviously is not a catch-all metric, but I think does kind of show what the Bills' offense has done. And I don't know why this just came to mind, but I don't know who was saying it on Sunday Night Football. Talking about like, oh, Josh Allen probably has the best supporting cast he's ever had, which was just absolutely hilarious to hear. It's quite the opposite. This is a guy who's been so good that he's elevated so much of his supporting cast that to have the highest EPA per play of any quarterback, which I think kind of speaks to how good Josh Allen has been. And I think this one's over. Though Lamar Jackson himself has had a terrific season and quite frankly has been better than last season. But for what I think MVP voters vote on account of, I think this one is sealed in favor of Josh Allen.
I'm glad you mentioned that there, Judah, because the entire narrative heading into the season was, oh, the Bills Super Bowl window was closed. This is the worst roster Josh Allen's ever had. No wide receiver ones.
It's one of those interesting things where like I was very passively listening. I was like doing a bunch of other stuff, and I hear a comment like that, and I perk up like, what are you talking about? Like this is complete nonsense. But exactly, like Josh Allen clearly has had his worst supporting cast. I mean, Khalil Shakir was his number 1 receiver. No shade on Khalil Shakir; he's a great player, but this was a guy who was a secondary weapon for many years before. It was wild.
And even after they go and get Amari Cooper, a little bit of a downgrade in his usage the last couple of weeks, which I guess is a little surprising, though. I don't know if that's that indicative of anything, as we've seen Buffalo obviously have a ton of success, even despite losing to the Rams 2 weeks ago. And they built this offense by design to kind of eliminate that wide receiver one and have more, weapons around, more scattered, I guess, than focusing on just having that one WR1 a la a Kansas City Chiefs model in a little bit of a way. But the way James Cook's been playing also has been really great. And we're all talking about the sporting cast offense. A lot of the talk about coming into the season was that the defense was also going to be worse, considering they let some older safeties go, some change in the secondary. But so far, so good for Buffalo. But let's stick to the main point here. Suma, do you agree at this point, Josh Allen versus Lamar, that even under, I guess I don't even know what catastrophic things can happen at this point for this really to flip on a dime here with Josh being, again, minus 900 going into week 16.
Yeah, it's basically over. I mean, the last 2 weeks from a quarterbacking perspective, probably the best back-to-back quarterback performances that I ever witnessed, at least up there. And regarding the supporting cast, what Judah said, I mean, here's the game against the Texans. I think it was in week 5 or 6. His receivers were Kieran Coleman, Mac Hollins, and Mark Valdes-Scantling. It was the game where Khalil Shakir was missing. And I mean, Amari Cooper, I think he was basically in and out with a wrist injury. Kieran Coleman missed 4 games now. Dalton Kincaid missed 3 games. So it's really not like we are talking about not even a healthy receiving group, let alone I don't know, top 5 receiving group from a skill talent perspective. I think, yes, they are basically healthy right now, but for most of the season, it's just been, I would say, Josh Allen madness.
Josh Allen madness. The window is Josh Allen, and I think that when I talk to, again, like you have so many different spaces of football, Twitter, football world. Obviously, everybody who watches the NFL has their opinions, their takes. And yeah, I think it's pretty simple that the window has always been Josh Allen. You can make that meme with the guy in space looking at the earth, like the window's Josh Allen. It's always been Josh Allen. So interested to see how Buffalo can do what they can do moving forward. But let's talk about the Detroit Lions, the team that Josh Allen masterfully beat on Sunday afternoon. And we've discussed the Lions ad nauseum all year long for a variety of reasons. Number one, they're a heck of a football team. And number two, we, especially you, Judah, discussed how this defense, despite putting up great advanced metrics, EPA, success rates, etc., that we were thinking they were punching above their weight class. Next thing you know, they get showered with injuries to their defense, which realistically no team can overcome. Now the injuries are also crossed over to the offense with some offensive line injuries they've had, as well as now David Montgomery looking like he's going to miss the rest of the season. Great graphic there, pulling up some key losses that are in addition to the losses they've already sustained. So Judah, talk about Detroit's injury, their fragility, and what you expect for them moving forward as we're heading toward the stretch run, and they're going to be without major key contributors on both sides of the football, on all levels.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it. This is a massive injuries. I'd even add, if you kind of look at schematically how they play, it's one thing. Losing Aiden Hutchinson's not an injury you come back from as the same defense. This was a guy who led the NFL in pressures by a huge margin through 5 weeks. They've obviously lost a lot kind of on the defensive line. And I think where they've been able to overcome that is, number one, when you're constantly playing from ahead, it's just a lot easier to play defense. And the Lions play a ton of man coverage. And for the most part of the season, obviously, you're going to have some injuries. They've been great. And their safety duo of Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch has been among the best in the NFL. And if you can play a lot of man coverage and win your one-on-one matchups, then you can scheme up a lot of pressure as they have. Again, at some point, like, your personnel is going to matter a lot more, and you can only mitigate so much. And I think we started to see a bit of that against the Bears in the second half of the Thanksgiving game when they lost 4 guys. We saw that a bit in the Packers game the week after. And I think it is one thing to, if I had to kind of put it in one point of, like, it is one thing to lose a lot of guys on the defensive line. You're obviously going to get a lot worse. I think the injuries to especially Carlton Davis is going to have real ripple effects just by the way they structured their defense. And I think it's going to look a lot like the Lions defense that we saw with Aaron Glenn for the past couple of years, which is a very heavy man coverage team that can't really win their one-on-one matchups and is going to be extremely vulnerable. And on the other side of the ball, they can still win any game. Like, this is an offense that still put up 40 points. And if your offense is so good, it is still 2024 NFL. You can win games just on account of your offense, and you can hide, again, the same defensive flaws. If you're constantly going up by 2 scores, it's a lot easier to play defense. So all that is to say, the injuries matter. I think they're going to be extremely game state dependent. Now, can they still win? Of course. This is still one of the best, if not the best, offense in football, or at least at the very top. But there are some serious problems on the defensive side. You just cannot overcome this amount and magnitude of injuries.
Yeah, well said. Of course, something I've seen circulating as well is like, yeah, Dan Campbell embodies the next man up mentality. Yeah, sure, but you can only play the players you have on the field. Like, especially again, considering a defense that was probably punching above their weight class in the first place, now going to not just second stringers but third and fourth stringers. That's going to be a recipe for disaster. Suma, please chime in on some of your thoughts on Detroit's injuries. I know we've discussed them ad nauseum, but also, I guess, if you have a take on what you expect the future to look like for the Detroit Lions over the next month of obviously the most important month of the season coming up.
Yeah, I I agree with what Judah said. I mean, to be honest, they played the Packers and the Bills, so their defense was already slated to look worse against against those teams. And now you add all the new injuries. I mean, it's going to be a mess from a talent perspective. This is just not not even an average defense anymore, and that will get them into some trouble. Like Judah said, I think they will be heavily game state dependent. And when you look at the playoff picture, I mean, in the AFC, there are a couple of really, let's say, fraud offenses, not so good offenses, Steelers, Broncos, Texans, Chargers. But in the NFC, I mean, depending on who they play and how they seed, there's the potential that they face some really good passing offenses or offenses in general. And that will make things, I think, much more difficult than what we thought maybe a month ago. Right now, they are still the favorites, slight favorites. They still have home field advantage as of right now, but they still play the Vikings late. And I mean, the Vikings, there's an actual chance that the Lions end up being the fifth seed and they won't have a first home game. Then they might travel to the Rams or the Bucks, who have some really sneakily decent offenses. And then this might get into a shootout, and then you cannot basically waste any possessions with that kind of defense. So I still like their offense a lot, obviously, but that defense makes their, I would say, playoff outlook right now really, really fragile.
Yeah, and that's a great point with the fact that the Lions play the Vikings and potentially could be the number 5 seed, and that is absolutely changes the entirety of their postseason outlook on their head. Of course, no bye and home field advantage, and like you said, some of the teams that they could be playing, we're seeing some teams with some really good offenses in the NFC as well, and the potential shootout. I feel like it's much harder to really say who's going to come out on top when both teams can score at will. It's going to be who gets that last stop. And this is a defense right now looking like they cannot stop anyone. But like you said there, Suma, going against the Packers and the Bills, yeah, you're going to look worse than you probably are. But still, if you're not even a league average defense with all the injuries, that's going to be tough. And of course, Patrick mentioning Gibbs having to carry the load without Monty. They know that they were going to be this thunder and lightning type combo. That's kind of going away. Definitely very interesting for the Vikings the Lions down the stretch, who are still plus 210 the favorite on FanDuel to win the NFC and are currently second in Super Bowl odds behind the Bills at plus 480 to win the Super Bowl outright. So definitely things to consider down the stretch with these key games coming up, and the fact that they might not even be the 1 seed when it's all said and done. But gentlemen, let's keep going on. Let's talk about another 1 seed, except in the opposite conference that now might be without star quarterback Patrick Mahomes for a little bit. Left the game with an injury to his ankle, looking like it's not terrible, but looking like that line is showcasing for this upcoming Week 16 matchup against the Texans might be showing that Mahomes is not playing according to the market, which we will discuss in a little bit. But let's just talk about Mahomes' injury. We know KC's offense doing great in terms of success rate, EPA, still just 12th in scoring points. So are they fully back? Are they fully broken? Offensive line, of course, has their problems as well. I'll go back to you here, Judah. Talk to me about your outlook on the Kansas City Chiefs with this potentially lingering Mahomes injury down the stretch with the number 1 seed not locked up either.
Yeah, I mean, they still have a decent advantage on the number 1 seed. They're still kind of the heavy favorites as they should be. Yeah, I mean, I think I would assume that Mahomes is out. The market has certainly indicated that is a likely occurrence. But yeah, I mean, I've been saying it for weeks. This is an offense that I have some concerns about. Like the high success rate Chiefs, I think that was true in the first half of the season. That has not been true the second half of the season. They're kind of middle of the pack in success rate and still kind of I don't know, top 10 in EPA. I think they're 10th best since like week 9. They're probably fine, but at the same time, and this is something we talk about frequently, there's almost some level of the Chiefs are a completely different team now, as they will be in the playoffs. And I still think this is a team that, especially because they still have a kind of hold on the number 1 seed. This conversation is obviously different if they're playing in the wild card round, but it should leave plenty of time for Mahomes to get healthy. And we've seen this script before. This is going to be a different Chiefs team in the playoffs, I think, than in the regular season. They're still quite good. I have some concerns on the defensive side of the ball. But on offense, this is probably just a good unit, not kind of this great or elite unit we saw from Mahomes and the Chiefs from like 2018 to 2022. They're not that, but that does not necessarily mean that we should kind of disqualify them or say that they're not kind of at the top of the AFC. They are. And obviously they're going to, the Bills and the Ravens are going to give them a run for their money, but they are the rightful favorites, I think. And certainly because of the ground they hold on the number 1 seed.
Yeah, and right now the Chiefs are plus 270 to win the AFC, behind the Buffalo Bills, who are plus 180 to win the AFC conference. And like you said, though, Judah, we saw it last year. Kansas City Chiefs again, they were 10-1 heading into the playoffs. Yes, very different teams with, I guess, less talent at the receiver spot. That was not like they have great talent now, but that defense was playing like the best, if not the best, top 3, 4, 5 units in the NFL. Not necessarily the case this year, but it could sound square, but if you're going to be Patrick Mahomes at plus money prices, I'm going to be betting that and seeing what happens. I'll gladly lose my bankroll bet in some Mahomes. But Suma, want to hear if you have any quick things on the Mahomes injury, or just basically Judah wrapped it up there?
Yeah, I basically wrapped it up. This might be a different team in the playoffs. Hollywood Brown might be back. So not overly concerned, but I think that the current iteration of the Chiefs offense has some concerns. Also, Patrick Mahomes' deep ball is not as efficient as in recent years. Maybe that changes a little bit with Hollywood Brown back in the lineup.
Yeah, and also so many missed plays to Xavier Worthy we've seen where his toe's been out of bounds, they're just off, and like again, can't be banking on those things to regress in terms of them completing those passes. But at the same time, if one of those two do go right down the stretch, we could also be looking at some things a little bit differently. So definitely worth noting. But let's move on to the Texans, who will be the Chiefs' opponent this upcoming week. We will break down this game a little bit more detail, but I want to talk more holistically about Houston, who are entering a tough stretch of games in quick succession coming off their bye. But they beat the Miami Dolphins 20-12. They have 4 turnovers forced from Miami. Another game where Houston does not look good, though they do get the win and cover. Suma, what are your thoughts on the Houston Texans moving forward? We've talked about them being this mediocre, terrible offense, realistically, that should be better, though the defense has been great. Do you see a light at the end of this tunnel for Houston, or do you expect this to be a team that's kind of going to fizzle out as they're just not that good compared to the rest of the AFC?
I think they're just not as good. I think they have a perfect fraud image, I would say. When you look at their statistical profile, this is basically a borderline bottom 10, bottom 12 offense that has been getting carried by their defense for most parts of the seasons. I mean, in recent weeks, the Cowboys win looks absolutely amazing in the box score, but a lot of that was turnovers, defense, Stroud executing on like very great field position. Against the Jaguars, they almost punted the game away after Trevor Lawrence got hurt. And yesterday, this was also another game, I think, that describes the Texans season pretty well. Offense could not move the ball when they had to start with like normal field position, and their defense just took their got the job done. I think 3 or 4 turnovers. They converted a 4th and 2 on a fake punt that set up another, 1-play touchdown by CJ Stroud. When you look at that drives yesterday, I mean, let's start here. Where is it? 1 touchdown drive over 70 yards, but that had the fake punt around midfield in it. Field goal, 0 yards. Touchdown, 28 yards. and a field goal over 55 yards. So it was basically one real scoring drive where the offense had to manage to go over 40 yards. I mean, we have been saying this about the Texans for like, I don't know, 2 months now, and the offense is still not improving. They just have to rely on their defense and getting short fields. And that is usually not a viable strategy when you want to win a lot of playoff games.
Certainly understood. And yeah, we've been talking about Houston forever. Again, starting the game of the season, maybe we'll see some progression from building on what they did last year to, okay, they're reverting to what they did that didn't work. Why are they doing that? To, damn, this offense is just bad currently. Judah, any other thoughts to add there about Houston and their outlook moving forward?
No, I think Suma hit it there. This is a defense that I think has been better than most would expect. I mean, they're over the past couple of months of the season as they've returned to health, and Daniel Hunter and Will Anderson are one of the best edge duos in the NFL right now. Is second in dropback success rate, EPA. They're top 5 against the run. This is a really tough defense right now. On the offensive side, I still think there's some ceiling. They got to get their offensive line kind of under control. Kenyon Green was having a historically bad season at guard, but they just lost Juice Scruggs. He didn't play this past week and is out 2 to 3 weeks. I think if this offensive line gets healthy, they still can make some noise on offense. I think it's probably going to need to come against teams that don't have great pass rushes. But then again, when you come playoff time, you're generally going to see teams with great pass rushes, though it should be said that the Bills and Ravens and Chiefs are not exactly kind of world beaters there. I think this team needs to get healthy on the offensive line, but they're reliant on their defense right now, and that's not a path to winning, especially in a very crowded AFC right now.
Great comment in the chat. Stroud is turning into Trevor Lawrence. As we know that at this point, that is definitely a diss. So, great comment there.
Honestly, when you look at, I mean, it's basically in a vacuum, but when you look at dropback success rate and EPA per play, this is basically the Spider-Man meme since the start of last season. They are basically perfectly equal to one another in those two metrics.
So great comparison pulled there. And it's definitely concerning for the Houston Texans and their young offense, but I guess we can see what happens this year. Another great comment. Congratulations to the 5th seed getting to play the Texans in round 1. There's a lot of that currently looks like a great matchup for whoever does get the ability to face Houston, as they're probably going to come in at the 4th seed, winning the AFC South as they clinch the division there. So don't think they'll be moving up, but we shall see what goes on. But we want to finish up our takeaways with a good segue into some of the future topics we want to discuss. And let's just talk about the NFC. NFC is awesome. The playoff picture is incredible. Lions 12-2 leading the way, win the tiebreaker over Philly currently based on best win percentage in conference games, though that's only an 8-1 edge to the Eagles 7-2. Of course, we have some big games coming down the stretch for both teams. Tampa now the 3 seed from the NFC South, winning the tiebreaker over the Rams based on win percentage in conference games as well. They have a little bit of a lead there with the same record. They're 6-3 in conference games, while the Rams are 5-5. Rams now in first in the NFC West with the Seahawks losing and then winning on Thursday night. And then the final playoff spot, you have the Vikings right now who have clinched the playoffs, but they are the 5 seed. The Packers now at the 6 seed with the big win in Seattle last night. Washington 7-9-5. But then you have Seattle, Arizona, Atlanta all on their heels. Seattle 8-6, Arizona 7-7, Atlanta 6-7 with an advantageous matchup tonight, which of course we'll be discussing. I'm going to you, Judah. Talk to me about how you think this NFC playoff field is going to transpire.
Yeah, I think the field kind of shakes out as is. Maybe the NFC West is in question a bit, but if Geno Smith is out, which is where my lean would be right now, or at least not at full health, I think the Rams probably stick around. I think what's most interesting is what happens after, because I think this is a wide open NFC. And every team has some serious flaws, and I think it's one of the rare times where I think all 7 teams actually have the upside to win, which I think is pretty crazy. But to very quickly go through it, I think we've spoken about the kind of problems with the Eagles. though I think they're probably the best bet right now. Granted, the seeding position is going to matter. And if they can get the number 1 seed, that is obviously such a huge edge. But their offense has not been able to, for the most part, pass the ball with success. Obviously, they had a good game on Sunday, though. I'd put the full stock of the season rather than just the recent sample we saw. Though the defense has been great now for the better part of 3 months. I think they're the favorite. We just talked about the Lions, and certainly they have the upside, but the defense is a problem. I think kind of the sneakiest team to me is the Bucs, at least relative to kind of where the market has them. This is a offense that through thick and thin, through all these injuries, they've been top 5 in any efficiency metric you can come up with. They're playing great. They're passing the ball. They can run the ball, which obviously helps in certain matchups. And the defense just started blitzing like 65% of the time. Now this is the 4th game. They blitzed 64% of the time against the Chargers last week. And since then, they have just been generating a ton of disruption and a ton of pressure. They lead the NFL in both of those categories. I think they're kind of sneaky. Obviously, it's all relative to pricing, and I think they should have. They do not have the most difficult of schedules coming up. They should have a pretty good hold on the NFC South. But as I said, any team I think can win, and any team has that upside that it's going to make for quite the race down the stretch.
Especially with some massive matchups coming in Week 16, have Commanders-Eagles, which is massive for the Commanders' hopes and the Eagles' hopes of a 1 seed. Falcons-Giants, of course, we'll see how Atlanta does tonight to see if they maybe won't even be a big game if they don't pull off a win against Las Vegas tonight. Seattle going against the Vikings, of course, huge for Seattle's outlook in Minnesota, maybe trying to get a 1 seed. Bears, Lions next week as well, for the Lions trying to get the ship righted and try to confirm to get that 1 seed. And then the Buccaneers, Cowboys, hopefully they can get a win there for themselves on primetime next week to extend their lead in the NFC South. Really, really interesting. Suma, talk to me about your thoughts on NFC. Do you agree with Suma that what we're seeing will probably stay relatively in place, or do you see a team like maybe the Commanders or the Commanders falling out as that 7 seed with Seattle pretty much right on their hip?
I agree with mostly what Judah said. I mean, the NFC North could be a little bit exciting. Will get decided over the last 2 weeks, I would say. Lots of division games. The Lions are crazily banged up on defense. If they drop another game, might be the season finale against the Vikings. Right now, they have all the tiebreakers, but if they drop another game and lose against the Vikings in Week 17, that could shape some things up. Right now, Rams also looking to be in the prime position, but someone in the comments asked about Arizona to win the division. Plus 650 at Fanduel right now. Arizona basically has to win all 3 games, and they are in the playoffs because they would own the tiebreaker over the Rams, no matter whether the Rams win their other 2 games. I would say the Rams also don't have the easiest matchup going to the Jets this season against an offense that has been gotten better. But yeah, gonna be exciting. I will say I'm also sneakily high on the Bucs offense, and I also think that the Packers are really coming along. Their defense has been gotten progressively better, and that's without Jair Alexander in the lineup for I think at least half of the season. Missed the last 3 games, was a full participant I think last Thursday. Then DNP, they called it that they don't want to rush him back, so maybe they get Jair back for the playoff run. And I think that their offense really is clicking at a top 3, top 5 level since John Love probably put his injury behind him. Packers, I mean, they were on the verge of beating Detroit at the Lions. Detroit needed like 4 crazy 4th down conversions to win that. I mean, that was also their strength at the end, but I think the Packers are really right up there with a decent defense and a very, very good offense.
It's going to be a hell of a playoff for the NFC, the AFC as well, which we'll discuss a slight bit. But yeah, like you guys mentioned, really open field with really, really good teams that have different strengths. And see a comment there, Kaj. If the Commanders can go 1-2 at best in their last 3. From what I read this morning, the Commies win 1 and the Falcons lose 1. Commies are in. So They play each other also week 17, so we shall see how that goes down, that Kirk Cousins revenge game. But we'll talk about that at a later date. And also a reminder, though, that the Best Bet Show is on the Forward Progress YouTube channel on Wednesdays. So if you do want to have more insight into some of the best bets that the team is making for the upcoming week, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out that show that goes live on Wednesdays. But, John, we're going to talk about some futures markets before we talk some Week 16 and, of course, the 2 Monday Night Football games. Before we get into a quick future discussion, have to shout out our sponsor, the great Fanduel Sportsbook. Bet the NFL season on Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook, the best sportsbook in terms of user interface, great lines, great quick payouts, as well as amazing live betting. Definitely worth checking out. And right now, all customers get a profit boost every single NFL game day. That means you can pump up your gridiron winnings multiple times a week. And tonight, of course, for Monday Night Football, 2 games, you should have some profit boosts for Monday Night Football. FanDuel has a ton of ways you can get in on the NFL action. You can bet on money lines, spreads, player props, and more. And plus, with super simple live betting, lightning fast bet settlement, and instant withdrawals, FanDuel makes betting on the NFL easier than ever before. Just visit FanDuel.com/forwardprogress to download FanDuel today. Must be 21 plus and present in select states or 18 plus and present in DC. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration. See terms for both offers at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, gentlemen, let's talk some futures. We already discussed the playoff picture. Suman mentioned maybe looking at Arizona, but another comment we saw, and just one of the best races to look at, the Coach of the Year race. This is very intriguing. Of course, it's had so much volatility. TA's not here right now, but he writes about it in his pre-season preview every single year, how of any market, the Coach of the Year obviously is an award that's bet on, has a pretty strict criteria of who wins the awards. It's more of an overachiever award rather than necessarily a best coach award. And right now, one of the guys I know he bet on, and I definitely tailed, Kevin O'Connell, +175 to win. Dan Campbell now down to +220 after that loss. Sean Payton, of course, with the rookie quarterback at +550. Dan Quinn as well, +750. Then I think Mike Tomlin, 14-1 is probably where the line stops if Tomlin even continues there. I'll go to you, Judah. Obviously, at this point, I think it's fair to say it's a 4-man race. Of course, it's going to vastly differ depending on who's winning games toward the end of the season now. But do you think at this point there's any value in any of those 4 guys at the top of the board? Or if you are looking down the board, why would you look so far down the board?
Yeah, I don't know if I think this is priced about right. I think Dan Campbell's probably a bit too high here, just as you mentioned. Like, this is an award that generally is the best indicator is look at the team's preseason win total, look at the actualized win total, and there you have it. I think O'Connell makes sense for obvious reasons. I guess if you want to, there's some narrative element to this as well. And if you want to kind of build in that, I think there could be some elements of like, oh, the Vikings have had a lot of their success come via their defense, and Brian Flores has certainly been talked about as one of the best defensive coaches. I think it's particularly ironic, just considering that the Broncos themselves have also there's a ton of credit given to Sean Payton. That's like the guy. The Broncos defense has also been incredible. And like, do people know that Vance Joseph is the defensive coordinator there? I'm not so sure. All that is to say, this is a team that also has clearly overachieved, should find their way into the playoffs. And then last but not least, I think Dan Quinn makes some sense also, but these are reflected in the market prices. Dan Quinn, again, take the preseason win total, take the realized win total, do some basic math there, and that's going to get you a lot of the way. But again, a lot of the narrative is like, Cliff Kingsbury is this great offensive coordinator, which I think is not true, but we're not betting on actual events here. We're betting on people's opinions of what these things are going to be. All that is to say, I think the market's priced about right. Maybe there's some slight value because I think Dan Campbell's priced a little bit too high. This is a Lions team that was expected to be good. But not a market that I'm dying to attack right now.
Totally understand that. Like you said, a lot of the value was sucked up, and it's, again, week 16 now. We have a pretty clear indication of what should happen. I did see some comments circulating Twitter. I think one of the announcers on one of the primetime shows mentioned how, Sean Payton's doing all this with a rookie quarterback, yet no love for Dan Quinn and the Commanders when one team won 8 games last year, one team won 4, and guess what? Both teams are rookie quarterbacks. But digression aside there, talk to me, Suma. Any thoughts on this market before we head into another market you want to talk about quickly?
No strong takes. I mean, Kevin O'Connell, I remember all the preseason talk where people said Vikings are in a transition year. Sam Darnold has been one of the worst starting quarterbacks, and now they have an actual shot to go, I don't know, 14-3, maybe sneak into the division win in week 18 at Detroit. I mean, if he gets there, I think this will probably be a no-brainer. But also other guys like Dan Quinn, I just don't see it. I mean, yes, I agree. The narrative about Kingsbury might be a little bit overblown, but in the end, I just don't see what Dan Quinn has really done to justify this, because he had little to do with the offense, and that's pretty much what's driving their potential playoff season. So I mean, right now I would also lean towards KOC, but the odds are not really that great.
Yeah, like we've got all three of us mentioned at this point. Obviously, the race is broken down the way it's broken down. There is still time for these big movements, but again, we're not talking about, say, Kevin O'Connell with a slight chance to maybe win the 1 seed who's now at like 11-1. Like, no, he's plus 175, so not massive there. But Jason, if we could pull up the offensive player of the year odds. Suma, you were mentioning that you were looking at potentially somebody not too far down the board, but not the favorite. Right now, we have Saquon minus 350 for obvious reasons, but Jamar Chase at plus 420, you were interested in. Talk a little bit about Jamar Chase's candidacy here.
Yeah, so there are some reservations about Chase, especially since the Bengals might drop out of the playoff race at some point. And with his ongoing contract situation, there might be a chance that he calls it a season at some point and might not play in their last 1 or 2 games anymore. But I wonder if Barkley might be a little bit overpriced here, because he is a little bit backed up. AJ Brown, there's a decent chance that he has an ankle sprain, might miss some time. I don't have seen any updates on that. So the Eagles offense in general might take a step back over the last 3 weeks. And Jamar Chase, he's on pace to win the Triple Crown. I mean, basically by a country mile. So if we are looking, let's say, after week 18 at Jamar Chase, I don't know, 1,800 yards, 19 touchdowns, 120 catches or whatever, I think there might be a chance that he might sneak closer into the final Offensive Player of the Year award discussion, so to speak of. But I think the way right now, he's set up for a lot of production because the Bengals have a terrible defense. They are basically playing from behind every game because they need to win out to have any shot at the playoffs. Should bode very well for a few productive weeks. But like I said, once they drop out of the playoffs, I'm not sure whether they will bring their A game and their A roster the rest of the way.
Yeah, the Bengals playing the Browns, hosting the Broncos, and then heading to Pittsburgh week 18, which we'll see if that game has implications for the AFC North, considering how that's shaking up with the Ravens still making some moves there. They play each other this week, which we'll talk about. So, again, this is why we love the NFL. We're going down to the wire, obviously, in multiple divisions and as well as playoff positioning. But let's talk some week 16 openers. Obviously, we're going to start with Thursday Night Football like we normally do. And this is another big game with the Denver Broncos heading to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. LA laying 3 at Fanduel, total 42.5. And just to get a picture painted of the AFC playoff picture, Denver currently the 6th seed, 9-5. Chargers are the 7th seed, 8-6. Right now, they're both 2-2 in division and 5-4 in the conference, which is also going to be big for tiebreakers. With the Chargers having beat also the Broncos earlier this year. But I'll start with you, Suma. Any thoughts on this opener for Thursday Night Football?
I think the spread is probably right. We don't know about the severity of Justin Herbert's ankle. He re-aggravated a little bit. I think Herbert is probably not supposed to miss time. He might be a little bit limited when it comes to scrambling and rushing in general. Denver are a little bit banged up on defense. DJ Jones left with I think, significant finger injury. Riley Moss still dealing with an MCL injury, missed the last 2 games. And Patrick Surtain also left last week with an ankle sprain. Doesn't sound too severe, but if there's swelling, it's a short week. So I think there's the potential that they could miss their top 2 cornerbacks, and that would probably play very well into the cards of the Chargers. I think the Chargers defense in general, what they've done this season was significantly above expectation. But I also think that we see their limitations against the good passing games in the game. Joe Burrow picked them apart at some point. Ravens had no issue. And yesterday, Tampa Bay, who also have a really good offense, were dealing all game long. I think that the good quarterbacks will find all those spots in the tight zone coverage, whereas that probably is much better when you face the worst quarterbacks in the game. And I think Bo Nix is probably one of the worst quarterbacks in the game right now. So I would expect a different Chargers defense this week.
Understood. Very well said there. Jude, any thoughts on this one? Do you agree with Suma that maybe it's probably correct, but maybe Charger spot, or just, again, early, just general thoughts?
I mean, I think I'd want to see, especially Patrick Surtain's injury. He left with an ankle injury, and this is a Denver team that plays a ton of man coverage. And if you can get him kind of on McConkey for a lot of snaps, we'll see if he travels to the slot. They have done that in the past. I think that's a massive matchup for Denver to be able to have Surtain there, because we saw what the Chargers passing offenses looked like. I'd also just say, like, losing J.K. Dobbins matters. This is a Chargers team which has not been able to get any semblance of a run game going over the last 3 games or 2.5 games now. And it's going to be more difficult to have success in the NFL when you're constantly putting yourselves in 3rd and long situations when you do run with no success. And this is a Denver defense which has been great. They also blitz a lot. That's the area where Herbert has taken a lot of sacks. That was kind of why part of the reason why I was on Tampa Bay this past week, and certainly so, compounding it with Herbert's problems on the mobility front. So if Surtain's in, I mean, granted, the line's probably going to move, and I have no real sense of on a short week what his likelihood of playing is, and at what strength is he at. But I do think this is a spot where Denver is probably a bit mispriced right now, given the state of the Chargers.
Understood. We have to keep an eye on injury reports for obvious reasons. And speaking of injury reports, yeah, sometimes the market will tell you what they're thinking about said injuries prior to, official announcements from Schefter, Rappaport, etc. Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Houston Texans. This is a Saturday game for everybody. Make sure you set your clocks. Yes, we're on the Saturday NFL slate as now. But Kansas City now 2.5-point underdogs at home, total 39.5. Expectation, of course, is that Mahomes will not be playing, because otherwise this would not be the line. So I guess I'm curious. I'll go right back to you, Suma. What do you think the line would be if Mahomes comes in? And do you think that this line is correct, assuming Mahomes is out? Not saying what do you think is going to happen with this injury, but saying that do you think it's gone too far to cover the injury, or not far enough?
So first of all, I don't know about his ankle injury. But I will say this was on its way to a flat 3 earlier today. And then our buddy Hitman had something to do with this coming back all the way down to where it is right now. I think with a healthy Mahomes, this would probably be like a, -3.5 kind of spread. If he ends up playing, I think this might swing back to banged up Mahomes, probably -2, -2.5-ish for KC. That's just guesswork right now. Rap sheet said today that he's week to week, so that means he's probably going to play. because Rap Sheet's track record has been absolutely horrible this season. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has played through a high ankle sprain already. He missed 1 week with a dislocated kneecap. So would I be surprised if he ends up playing? No. Market definitely indicating that there's a decent chance of Carson Wentz, but also saying that +3 was probably underpriced because, I mean, the Texans, we talked about it, they are not a great football team. They have tremendous issues on offense. And this was supposed to be a low-scoring game anyway. So the downgrade to Carson Wentz in this specific matchup might not be as severe as a Patrick Mahomes downgrade in past seasons.
Yeah, very interestingly put there that it's not to say, because you said you saw it going to a 3, obviously that key number there, that it's kind of like an in-between-ish number of what it could be if Mahomes is fully ruled out. So I think that was very interesting because I wasn't really thinking about that where I kind of saw it more black and white, but there's definitely more gray area there. Judah, curious your takes here.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think the market's pricing like a 25% chance that Mahomes plays. I think this line moves to the other side of 3 if Mahomes is out, and I don't think it's ever going to get back to the kind of initial look ahead line given Mahomes is obviously not going to be 100%. I think this is like a question of predicting injury probability, and that's not a game that I want to really be engaged in right now. So I'm gonna pass right now.
Yeah, totally understandable. No need to put on the old fortune teller's hats here or anything like that. Just look at the market, using what we know, and going from there. But before we get into our 2 Monday night games, one more crucial matchup: Baltimore Ravens at home, laying 6.5 against the Steelers. Though the Steelers 6.5 is -118 over at Fanduel. Total 44.5. Another picture to paint for you of the playoff picture. Steelers are in no matter what, but whether or not they win the AFC North is up for debate. They are 10-4, 3-1 in division, 7-2 in conference. Ravens 9-5, 2-2 in division, 5-4 in conference. As we know, the Ravens lost to the Steelers a few weeks back in a low-scoring environment where I feel like we thought that was maybe when the teams would be over teams, but nope, back down to earth. 18-16 win for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Go right back to you now, Judah. Do you think that this market is fair to start for an opener for another Saturday game? So again, market calendars, Steelers Ravens.
Yeah, I think the market's about right again. It's like injuries. TJ Watt is hurt. That's obviously a massive injury for this Steelers defense, and like they're going to live and die by Russell Wilson's deep balls. And they were hidden for a bunch of weeks, and the offense has not had a lot of success when they're not hitting. I think this is look, the Steelers have been one of like the historically good defenses at preventing like quarterback scrambles. They've always done a good job with Lamar Jackson that way. It's been true this year. They've allowed like 60 yards to opposing quarterbacks running. There were a lot of jokes about like Lamar Jackson's mom calling him, telling him he needs to scramble more. This is actually something I looked at like earlier in the season, that on his scrambles, his like passing rate, i.e. when he breaks the pocket and begins the process of scrambling, which is something that PFF charts, he had been passing at a way, way, way higher rate, which had also meant that his sack rate plummeted and he'd actually been a lot more of an effective scrambler on the whole. But that kind of all changed in the 1 week sample that we have, where he was running a lot more. Including, I should add, very comically holding up his pants. One of those runs. That was a great moment watching Red Zone yesterday. But all that is to say, I think if he continues to go with this run approach, that's a small advantage to the Steelers. But I'm picking things at the margins here. I think this is priced pretty much right. And I think the injury news is going to be the biggest driver of line movement from now until kickoff on Saturday.
2 hours ago reporting, Mike Tomlin optimistic on Watt availability against Ravens, so definitely something to keep a note of as well. Suma, any thoughts on this opener before we talk about some Monday Night Football?
Yeah, TJ Watt, they call it a low ankle sprain, so I would also expect him to play through. Maybe he's not at 100%, but we certainly don't know. Not Pickens, I think he had that hamstring pull on a Thursday in practice, and they called it a grade 2 hamstring strain. And on Saturday, he would be removed 16 days from that. So I would probably lean towards him not playing. I think 50-50 at absolute best. Sean Elliott, hamstring injury, did not practice at all last week. Pretty decent safety against the run this season. And Larry Ogunjobi also missed last week's game. Not sure about his availability. So Pittsburgh dealing a little bit with some injuries. If they don't get those guys back, I think they will have a very hard time, but the market's also pricing this very well. I mean, I think the game a few weeks ago, this closed somewhere around 3.25 or something at Pittsburgh.
Yep, certainly time for the engineers to come in, the market to adjust. Of course, big bettors with their edges, sharp guys getting in some max bets to really influence this. So good thoughts overall on the openers. And again, those last two games are Saturday games. So get excited for some college football, NFL collab on Sunday. But let's talk about tonight, which I love the doubleheader Monday Night Football, even though there are times at the same time. Digression aside, though, we have two massive games for Minnesota, one needing to improve their positioning, and the Atlanta Falcons needing a win to ideally stay in a playoff race. But we're going to start with Chicago, Minnesota. Looking at the lines right now at Fanduel Sportsbook for this first Monday night game, we have the Vikings laying 7, though the 7 is minus 120, for the Bears getting the 7. Total 43.5. We know what happened the first time these two teams met. Bears miraculously send the game to overtime and then do cover that number of 3.5. But obviously, its own new game here. Going to go to you, Suma. I know you have an opinion on this Vikings-Bears game, so lay it on us.
Yeah, I like the Vikings. Not sure whether I'm going to go head-to-head with X-Shish again, but I like the Vikings quite a bit today. The Bears offense, they look abysmal. Braxton Jones, left tackle, is not going to play. I think it was an illness. Got downgraded yesterday. I just don't see how this offense will sort out all those blitzes and wonky looks that Brian Flores is going to provide. This offensive line has had issues in pass protection pretty much all season long. Last week against the Niners, we saw these screenshots floating around X where like 3 or 4 receivers were running into the same spot. And I think all those issues, also adding that Caleb Williams has a tendency to hold onto the ball too long. I think this just doesn't bode well against this Minnesota Vikings defense. I think they will get the better out of this matchup. And then on the other side, I don't want to call Sam Darnold hot or anything, but I think that this Bears defense has really has been decreasing in terms of efficiency over the course of the season. Last week, there was a play where it seemed like Tremaine Edmonds was just checking out of the game or something, like he was not interested. I think the Vikings should just be fine on offense to make this a very good game script for them, and then also score enough to get this one home. I just don't see how the Bears offense gets much in a serious game script. Maybe they can score a little bit in crunch time, but I think this is a very good matchup for the Vikings defense.
Certainly. Well said there. Very good match for the Vikings defense. Again, we see a nice comment that if you really do break down the matchup prior, that the Vikings had the game in hand, it was a wonky way to get to overtime and then have the Bears cover. Judah, curious your thoughts on this Bears-Vikings game.
Yeah, I think the markets obviously are pretty good at this point. I agree with some of the comments here. I think the over is the side I'm on. Counterintuitively, Caleb Williams has actually been way better against the blitz than he has on non-blitz plays. If I had to guess, I think it has to do with kind of forcing him to speed up his processing. We've talked for the entire season about kind of if you track Caleb Williams' time to throw, it's going to be a leading indicator of his success. And when he's throwing the ball within 3 seconds, he's been good. When he's throwing it after that, it's been pretty bad. And his time to throw against the blitz has been significantly lower. I think it speeds up a lot of the processing there. And the Vikings have been, obviously, they forced a ton of turnovers, but they've been beatable kind of from a yardage perspective. And I think the Bears can put up some points. And on the flip side, I don't see how this Bears defense, which has been the worst in the NFL since week 6, is going to be able to stop Minnesota here. I think they can get most of the way themselves. And also if Caleb Williams can continue some of his better play against the blitz, then the Bears could also put some points on their side as well.
Suma on the Vikings. Judah looking at the over potentially. If the Vikings, like Suma said in the chat, 27-17 Vikings hit an over, cover a spread. Who says now we got a best bet from somebody in the chat? Hey, Judah's on the same side, so let's root for that over as well. Let's talk about the second game, Atlanta, Las Vegas. Desmond Ridder will be suiting up for the Las Vegas Raiders in a revenge spot. Obviously, take whatever you want to what you will with that statement, not being serious. But Raiders at home, getting 5.5, total 44.5. Judah, this is the game you've targeted for your same game parlay. So let's get onto the story you're telling or the tail outcomes you're looking to capitalize on.
Yeah, I think this is a spot for the Falcons. They have been. I mean, I honestly didn't believe Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown a touchdown pass since week 9, which is kind of crazy. But I think this is kind of the exact spot for him to have some success. The Raiders have been the biggest pass funnel in the NFL. They are forcing teams to pass against them. Teams are throwing 10% more than expected against them over the last 6 weeks or so. They've had one of the better run defenses. Max Crosby's out for the year. That's obviously going to have not only is losing him massive by his ability to generate pressure, which they were struggling to do to begin with, but also now he was attracting a ton of double teams. It's going to make all of their secondary pass rushers a lot worse as well. So I think this is a spot for Atlanta to put up a bunch of points and do so through the air. Vegas also plays a lot of man coverage, but this is a team which has been decimated by injury. Nate Hobbs might be back, which, if anything, is going to strengthen our same game parlay build in a second, considering he sticks to the slot. But most of their guys have been in kind of the bottom 20th percentile in terms of their ability to prevent separation, their yards per route run against man coverage. Not a great unit. I think this really sets up as a great spot for Atlanta. I actually like him on the spread here. Desmond Ridder is an absolute journey of a quarterback. And I think is of the Sam Howell, Tommy DeVito type, where he is magnetic to sacks and pressures that even though the Falcons do not have a great pass rush, I think this might be a spot where they still get to him a couple times. But onto the same game parlay build. The Falcons have one of the narrowest distribution of targets in the NFL. They're really kind of throwing to a couple of guys, and it's mainly flowing through Drake London and Darnell Mooney. And as I mentioned, Nate Hobbs is their Raiders' best cornerback. He's going to be in the slot, which is where Ray McLeod lines up a bunch. And I think this is a spot where Atlanta's going to pass. So going to take Cousins 300, 100 for each of these receivers. I think we're going to get some value here, given how concentrated the targets are on these two guys, right? They do not follow kind of the regular distribution of touches that you would see from a wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. Usually these things are inversely correlated. But I think this actually speaks to a game in which the Falcons do end up passing a lot and have some success. And on the other side, to kind of just get some value here and get the coveted fourth leg, Sincere McCormick has taken over this backfield. This is not a particularly difficult matchup against the Falcons. And I mean, Antonio Pierce finally finding some way to establish the run, even against two tough run defense opponents in Kansas City and Tampa Bay. I expect McCormick to get fed the rock a bunch. He's been good. The numbers look good. His props are still very, very low for a guy who I think is going to see plenty of volume. Add up those 4 legs, Kirk Cousins, 300, Darnell Mooney, 100, Drake London, 100, Sincere McCormick, over 59.5 receiving yards, getting this at almost 90-1. Let's go Atlanta passing game.
Atlanta passing game. There it is, Sincere McCormick, one of the great names in football as well. But it might have been almost 14 or 13 weeks too late, but the Raiders have finally got the run game going, like you did mention there, Judah. But that's a lovely almost 9-1. But like we mentioned earlier, Suma has a play on the Vikings laying. Did you get the 7 earlier, Suma? Were you get 6.5 early? What number did you get the Vikings at? Just curious.
Anything else would be pass posting, so going with the Fanduel 7.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that. Very much so. Appreciate it. Shout out to everybody in the comments all show long. We really appreciate you. Be sure to hit that like button. If you're watching on X, we appreciate your viewership as well. Of course, head over to YouTube, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel. Never miss out on the amazing content we have. Again, prop bet shows, best bet show on Wednesday, live watch-alongs, all on the Hammer Betting YouTube channel or the Forward Progress YouTube channel. So come on over. Again, no show next week, unfortunately, with the holiday season. So we're not going to be able to say happy holidays before then. So we'll say it to you now. Happy holidays, everybody. Best of luck with your bets tonight. Best of luck with your plays this weekend. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a good one. Appreciate you.